Muslim. There was Reverend Marvin Griffin from Ebenezer Baptist Church giving the main speech. We had the choir from St. Martin's Lutheran Church singing. It was inspiring. It was just a joyful experience. And so many people commented afterwards that it was the first time that they had ever been in a synagogue. And this wouldn't be possible if this were not an interfaith organization.
So if we didn't have AMM, we would miss that kind of opportunity
I think the whole community would be the less for it.
Broader faith traditions. Well, I think that's helpful to take that one illustration of what it's meant.
Very appropriate, as you have brought this up, is that right at this time during the Gulf crisis, you had Muslims, you had Jews, and you had Christians gathered together praying for peace, praying for fellowship, praying for resolution to world tension and equity.
Where else in Austin would that have happened if it hadn't happened there?
I don't think there is any other place it would have happened. I think there are smaller groups, and certainly there's a desire, but to have 300 people gathered in a sanctuary, over 300, maybe 400, representing that diverse group is very important.
All right, so the context this year was very special.
Black, Hispanic, Anglo.
Now, Frank, this is your first year on the board.
Yes, it is.
Why have you volunteered to do this?
I've always been interested in ecumenical work. I served on the board of Houston Metropolitan Ministries and was president of that organization in Houston when I lived there. And when I had the opportunity, someone asked me to serve on this board. I really was very interested in doing it because I believe in this kind of interfaith sharing and sharing of responsibility and sharing of experience in our common effort to understand and know God.
Why do you believe in it?
I think one of the things that I believe is most important in our country and is most important for the world is a development of tolerance. Not only tolerance, but a empathy toward people who have other faiths and other expressions of faith, and also a sharing of our own faith with them. And it deepens, I think, the understanding that people have of themselves and the world that they live in and of other human beings by doing that. And it also, I think, it eliminates some of the tensions, the kinds of bitter disputes that can arise between people of different faiths.
Okay, so I think what you started out with was the tolerance, and then you spelled out something of what that means both locally and in a broader sense. I didn't ask you, Gail, why you have volunteered to be part of this.
Well, I think that interfaith understanding is the key towards peace on the local level and certainly on the international level, and it's been a true pleasure for me to be a part of this organization, especially to see it struggle through the questions that happen in the community at a larger level nationally. We have come to mutual understandings and respect for each other's differences and take pleasure and pride in the traditions of each faith, and it's been inspiring for me.
Well, give us an example of a problem or differences that have been struggled through that you've observed and participated in.
I think if I might bring it down to just when we all work together on a project that's good for the community, such as hands-on housing, gave us an opportunity to work together for the betterment of Austin. When you see 700 volunteers get together to rehabilitate 45 houses in the community, work together during the day and break bread together at night and take pride in that accomplishment, it is a wonderful feeling to feel that you've accomplished this. This has never happened before.
Well, now, this was in 1990, hands-on housing, that participation and extent of involvement that you just mentioned. But, I mean, there's been housing rehabilitation going on in Austin for years. The Housing Resource Center, the Habitat for Humanity. What was different about this?
Well, first of all, I believe Habitat for Humanity builds homes from scratch. This was actually rehabilitating homes. And we'd never had one day, one Saturday, when 45 homes were made habitable for families. The home that our congregation worked on, for instance, had never had hot water, or hadn't had hot water in many years. This was the first time that she was able to experience having water from the tap that she didn't have to boil up to get it warm.
You went out there on that Saturday and
I sure did.
Participated.
I did. In fact, a couple of our congregants were so taken with the joy that it gave them just working on it that they continued on several weeks afterwards with little small projects just to bring that particular house up to date.
I see. Okay, so the number of folks that were involved at a given time is a new thing, 1990, AMM related to that. Pat, just give us a checklist of other activities that AMM is connected with.
I think that it takes the housing, take Hobo, take Habitat, Housing Resource Association that you're talking about, just to dwell on that, and then hands-on housing. All these things have emanated out of the religious community. That has been their genesis. I think the important thing, though, that is taking place is the cohesiveness and coming together, and not individual projects, isolated projects, and sharing that on a very large scale to make an impact on public policy of housing.
All right, so to move out of just hands-on to non-hands-on to try to affect those decisions.
There's a crisis in housing in Austin.
All right.
We are losing our housing stock. There's 36,000 homes that are under standard, underutilized. There's abandoned homes. There's a need for new homes. There's the whole idea of the homeless, and you've got the working poor that are feeding into that. There's the whole question of affordable housing. If you ever went to Caritas, you know, and a big thing in Austin is people not being able to meet their rent bills, okay?
Yeah.
Well, if they had housing for $300 a month instead of housing for $500 a month, they could have and had affordable housing based on that minimum income level. So we have a severe question. So it's a question of doing more than just service. It's a question of doing service, bringing the religious community together to understand and be literate about the problem and address public policy.
All right, well, public policy is something that, in regard to housing, Frank, when you were the mayor of the city, was it your experience that what Pat was saying is true, that there has been this deterioration of the housing stock and that there is a crisis in this regard?
There is certainly a crisis when it comes to the availability of low-cost housing, not only in this community, but all over the United States. And it's a serious problem that I commend the religious community and every other group is working on it.
Well, do you think
needs to be addressed.
Do you think the religious community should be doing anything besides like what Gail and the others did on Hands-On Housing Day, going out and trying to help individuals? Do you think there is a role for public policy for the religious folks?
You bet. I think that with what was especially good about that, and what is especially good about those kinds of programs, is that not only are you addressing a human need, which is the most important thing about it, but you are also getting an additional benefit, and that is that the people who are there and participating and sharing in this experience are people of different faiths who get to know each other as human beings working on a common problem. And that dimension is something that adds to their common understanding and appreciation for each other, not only for their faiths, but for them as human beings.
So what it's doing to them as persons, and maybe what it's doing to some of the religious institutions that are affected to make them more sensitive. We've spent a fair amount of time on housing, but I know there's been other things. Gail, I know you have a particular interest in the medical community here in town. What's happening as far as chaplaincy and this side of AMM that you can share with us?
As far as chaplaincy is concerned, it's been a pleasure for Austin Metropolitan Ministries to have sponsored chaplaincy programs at Brackenridge and at the jails in the past. And in addition to that, in terms of medical, we also have a ministry towards people with AIDS and HIV disease and their families, giving support and spiritual enrichment. So there are many aspects to what Austin Metropolitan Ministries is doing.
Well, now there there are programs for persons suffering from AIDS apart from AMM.
Yes.
What is AMM doing that's not being done otherwise in that regard?
Well, for instance, there is a helping of each other spiritually, of empathy with each other as we try to conquer this disease medically, but also trying to enrich lives during a very difficult and stressful time. It was probably one of the most emotional things that I have ever participated in when Reverend Bob Huey's group had a interfaith service for those people with AIDS in the community to support the people with AIDS and their families. This was under the umbrella of Austin Metropolitan Ministries. There is a group that works with people with HIV disease and their families.
AIDS Interfaith Ministry is called.
All right,
AIM.
So that's kind of a subdivision of AMM.
That's correct, right.
Okay.
Every issue, you know, what you look, as we look at issues within the city and within the community, really has three components. And if you want to look at that, one would be political, one is economics, and the other is ethical. And AIDS would be a question there. What about the economics of providing for people with AIDS? What about the political circumstances of people in fear of it? Is it a popular cause? And what about humanity?
All right.
You know, the ethical question. And I think that's where the religious community comes in public policy.
And where AMM comes in is that it provides a forum by which to explore those policy and ethical dimensions.
It challenges and you mentioned it before, the religious institutions to come to an understanding of their role as purveyors of ethics and public policy in the public forum, but also challenges the community as a whole that there are ethical dimensions to every issue.
Okay, now let's take the ethics in terms of the chaplaincy program. Gail mentioned one that has traditionally, I know, been associated with Brackenridge, with Travis County Jail, and with Gardner House. What's happened in 1990 in regard to these ministries as a result of its connection with AMM? What's different now than it was a year or 2 years ago that you can put your finger on?
A major emphasis is coming. I've just had a meeting at the Catholic Chancery with Deacon Dutz DeFore, who is also a chaplain. The chaplains at the county jail, as well as the volunteer chaplains within the religious community, have a vehicle that meet regularly to coordinate those kind of services. But the need now is to begin to pull together and look at the gaps within the criminal justice system. You know, they're talking about that, services to a culture of crime that is developing within our youth community.
You know, it's interesting, Pat, you have a way of thinking that's coming out in more than one issue. I mean, you start out with the program is that we have the chaplain on site at this particular institution, but before you're done, you go back and you say, we're looking at the broader picture and the gaps in the criminal justice system. You think in policy terms, don't you?
Yes. I think that part of the purpose of AMM is to assist the religious community and not only forming this umbrella and this community among themselves, but also to assist them identifying that the religious community has to think in policy terms to impact change, as well as service terms.
Okay.
And should not give up the services and the providing of needs, but that it is a broader thing. It is a question of service. It's a question of advocating on behalf. It's a question of assisting people within the community itself, take the housing issue, to be of self-help, to do it themselves, enabling an empowerment process.
All right.
It's all those things. It's not just one kind of a single notion.
Well, now you mentioned the services, you mentioned the policy, the advocacy side. There's another thing that I have picked up on, being closely connected with the organization, and Frank, I somehow got this connected with you, and that is the issue of racism in town, and particularly as it was related to an incident at the University of Texas. Bring us up to date on that, how you got involved and what that issue involved.
Well, I've been working on this issue personally for a long, long time. I was in the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice. One of my first jobs right out of law school, and worked in Montgomery, and some of these places in the South on these issues. And it really arose out of my religious beliefs and convictions at that time. I think that we've got a situation in the world today, all over the world. It's not just in the United States, but it's all over the world, where there is a tension between two opposite approaches to relationships between human beings.
Okay, well, let's focus on Austin.
Right.
It was precipitated at the university.
Right.
But not limited to the university.
This is, no, it's not limited to the university, but the thing that precipitated my concern was an incident at the university, or a couple of incidents.
All right.
That were within the student body and things that happened at Roundup.
Mm-hmm.
And I brought this issue to the board's attention.
All right.
And we formulated a statement, which we published in the Daily Texan in response to this.
By the board, you mean the Austin Metropolitan Ministry Board?
The Austin Metropolitan Ministry Board.
Mm-hmm.
And basically the statement was one which emphasized the ethical dimensions of this issue, and pointed out that the great religions of the world basically lead us toward an appreciation of all human beings as brothers.
Is that all you did, was take out an ad in the paper?
No. After we did that, we formed a commission, which is called the Commission on Racism. It's a part of Austin Metropolitan Ministries. And this commission has been working on this issue, meeting with different members of the community, particularly within the University of Texas context, trying to identify how we should approach this. And basically we've come up with two programs. One is related to the university community, and we've already gone to one fraternity and put on a program in which we shared our thoughts and beliefs with them, and also gave them an opportunity to share in small group sessions with us. But that program is directed toward the students, and giving them an opportunity to put this in a moral or ethical context.
And then you you said there was a second program.
The second program we're developing is one in which we're going to be pairing churches and synagogues that have basically different ethnic and national compositions and different characteristics, social characteristics, so that they work together on issues in the community and also share with each other and get to know each other in working on common problems together. And I think those are the two things that we've been working on and have developed as a program out of this commission and the work of this commission.
Yeah. You know, one thing that strikes me as you talk about this work is that you've heard the town gown tensions, and what can the townies have to do with the gownies? And here you're saying is that you come in from the Austin community into the university setting. I suspect that the university had some response to that issue internally. What is there about coming in from the outside?
Well, I think that the university is part of the Austin community, not the Austin community part of the university. So I think the perspective is that we're not coming in from the outside.
Okay, all right.
I mean, there is a, you can look at it from another level. To what level of tolerance is allowable in Austin for racist acts? You know, I mean, you can get at it in many different ways. So there was not, I'm only mentioning that, there was not the problem of speaking to question the problems of ethics within the university or outside the university. In fact, the board, and I think the religious community, is increasingly thinking that that is its proper role and responsibility to do that.
Okay, so you're trying to, in a way, erase the distinction between the insiders and the outsiders and say we're all part of one community here.
That's correct, in that sense.
Yeah. In addition to that, we went by invitation. We made ourselves available, but we were invited to come to the fraternity houses.
Yeah, yeah. Frank mentioned the forthcoming 1991 emphasis on pairing congregations that were of different faiths and diversity otherwise. Do you think that's needed, Gail? And
oh,
if so,
I certainly
why?
do. Because there's so many misunderstandings, preconceptions, misconceptions about each other. We have a chance to share some meals together and perhaps enjoy a worship service together, work on a project together, come over for spaghetti. Just a chance to be informal and enjoy each other and learn a little bit about our faith traditions.
Now, what about there's been a trilogue that we've featured on this program at one time about the Jewish, the Muslim, Christian discussions to try to get, is this more of that, or is there something different
That
about
could
this?
be one facet of it. There could be a facilitator with some program discussion, but I think it's really a chance to get to know each other informally also, although that we're hoping to increase more formalized dialogues apart from this section.
Yeah, I've just been given the 2-minute warning, so I need to just give you a chance to, all of you can contribute. Name some of the things that AMM is doing that we haven't named so far, that the public might be interested.
Well, Crop Walk, I think we ought to bring up Crop Walk.
All right.
Crop Walk went from, I think, in '89 of $45,000 or $40,000 to 80, what is it, $86,000.
A big increase.
A big increase.
Okay, crop in the spring.
Yeah.
All right.
East Grove and Zilker Park, where a tree is planted each time there is a nuclear test somewhere in the world, sponsored by the various faith organizations.
Keep going, keep going.
We co-sponsored a appearance here by Archbishop Weekland of Milwaukee, which I thought was an excellent program in which he talked about ecumenism and the way in which it should be approached. And I thought the Archbishop gave a great speech to a number of people from different denominations.
Okay. Well, I think that you have given us a sense of the diversity and just what a variety we have that is as a result of AMM, including this program. Austin Metropolitan Ministries and Austin Faith Dialogue are all together.
How many programs are on this year?
Well, we have every week, 52, and we're going into our 4th year in 1991 and look forward to it and look forward to having you folks continue to join us on Austin Faith Dialogue. I'm Richard Thompson, thanking you for watching, and peace be with you. For more information, call Austin Metropolitan Ministries at 470